All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Let me do some quick intros. We got Brad Van Hoy.
Finally got it right.
You got how many kids?
2 girls.
2 girls. One's at Clemson.
That's right. She just finished her sophomore year at Clemson. The other is 15, turned 16 in September.
Awesome. And Josh, how many kids you got?
I got 3 girls.
You got 3 girls. Where are we at on the spectrum?
So I got one that's just finished her senior year of high school, and one that will just finish sophomore year, and one that just finished 8th grade.
Awesome.
Yeah, so all high schoolers next year.
Man, I'm
wow.
You're a little further ahead than me. You're way out there.
I'm old.
You can see it.
And then Kyle, what we got big gap over here.
We got
right?
gaps, yes. So got a daughter who just finished freshman year. So it'll be a rising sophomore in high school. And then we've got a 5 and 3-year-old. So got some time there.
Got a lot of time. So we're walking at probably a month ago, or having a discussion, and I had just done a tour University of Tennessee with my oldest, and it was the second college tour. We did Liberty first and then University of Tennessee.
What year is he?
And he's junior, my oldest, and rising senior. And we're just having a discussion about this whole journey. It's so different than when I was looking to go to college, and just kind of birthed the whole idea of this, just dads talking about the whole college experience and what we gleaned from when we were in school and what our kids are going after now and how it's just changed. So I just kind of want to look at the whole big picture from high school going into college, and none of us have kids out of college, so we're just going to leave that alone.
Yeah.
But definitely want to talk about, just that whole thing. So I want to talk about the pre-years. So this is like the high school thinking, beginning that journey, which I think for us, we started looking at our sophomore year, probably not necessarily college, but just thinking about it. What about you guys? Like when did you start? Because you have the most experience here as the elder.
For Ava, probably sophomore year is when it really picked up. That's when we started to look at it.
What did you do? Like, what was the process? Like, what were you thinking?
We started talking to her, I think, about what colleges she might be interested in, and then started thinking about, all right, where are we going to take tours? And we didn't take tours to every place that she was going to go to, so we wanted her really to kind of figure out, all right, do you want big? Do you want small? Is there a particular major that you think you might be interested in? Are you interested in big-time college athletics? Things like that. And you start to narrow down some of the choices, and then some of it's just geographical. We weren't interested, and she wasn't interested in going out a long way from home. So we're looking at Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina. And that narrows it
in
down.
the region.
In the region. That's right.
A little geography lesson real quick.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, this is in Charlotte, so this is very close. So has it been the same for you?
Yeah,
Josh?
it was probably about that same, probably our sophomore year, I would think, from that standpoint as well.
What do you guys think about the importance of high school and the diploma? Like when you think about getting into college, when we were in high school, getting your degree from high school was a really big deal. And your grade, your GPA, is that changed at all? Is it the same?
I think it's still a big deal. I'm from rural North Carolina, so for some people, high school was as far as they were going to get. But obviously, you can't go to college if you don't have a high school diploma. So it's still a big deal. It's still a milestone event. But it almost feels like it's a little bit of a speed bump on the way to college instead of being quite as big a deal as it was when we were younger.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And I would, I did think that. Oh, you're going to pause me, are you?
Not you.
Okay. I did think that. I do think that high school diploma is important. I do sense, though, with a lot of our friends that have similar age kids, that that college diploma isn't as important as I feel like it maybe.
What about grades
right now? Yeah.
What about grades? GPA.
I think grades may be the most important thing now. SATs,
Right, they've
important.
taken a lot of that out,
Yeah,
right?
a lot of
Like it's a
schools-
factor, but not really a deciding factor in a lot of those school decisions, right? The ACT, SET.
I think for a lot of schools, they don't even take it anymore.
Really?
Right.
Okay.
They don't even accept it. And it's some people think that it could only be a detraction if you take it. I'm not sure if that's the case, but GPA now seems to be the
That
single
and then
biggest determinant.
Extracurriculars, is that
Well,
what they're
I
like?
think
How
so.
are they doing?
Let me cut in there because I was blown away what I learned at University of Tennessee. So we're sitting in this
Vols.
huge room. Yeah, go Vols, Rocky Top, whatever. we're sitting in this huge room, and they start talking about the application process, which we're going to get into in a second. And it's merit. It's based on what you put down. They don't ask for your grades anymore.
So it's like a resume.
And here's the crazy part.
Doing?
You put your best 2 grades. So of the 4 or 5 majors like math, science, all that stuff, you pick your best 2. And then if you have classes that have like AP or honors classes, you can add those to it. So if you have 2 A's, you can have a 4.0. And then if you have 2 honors or AP classes, you can add those. So you can end up with you could have actually in high school a 3.2. But for application processes at University of Tennessee, you could actually end up with like a 4.4.
All right.
On the flip side,
are you saying they don't ask for a transcript anymore?
They did not say that. They said they gave the impression it's by student honor when you fill out the application. All that app. What's the app that you have to do?
Common App.
The Common App. You just fill it out in the Common App. You don't. They didn't say. They made it seem like we're not checking. You just put these grades, and the impression that we were getting is just to level the playing field.
Okay.
So it could actually, if you're an awesome student, and you have 5 A's and then an AP or a couple APs or 3 or 4, and you have a 4.7, it's going to hurt you because you can only take 2 APs and 2 A's. And she said on the flip side, if you have 2 A's and like D's, you're going to look like a rock star because you're going to end up applying with a 4.0.
Jeez. If that's the case, it's changed in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I would say so. Even
this is just University of Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Yeah, right. Ava applied to Tennessee, and that wasn't the way it was for her there. So it's
interesting.
It's crazy how quickly this is changing.
The Common App has changed a lot.
Sorry, didn't mean to speak over. Was she pre-COVID?
She would have been probably in the middle of COVID when she was starting to apply.
So that's whenever all of this was really shifting, right?
That's right.
And they also did, I don't remember the name, because whenever they kept saying this word or this phrase, we're all looking at each other. All the parents were like, what's that mean? What's that mean? And it was where if you've taken the SAT or the ACT, which they do require, if you've taken them 4 or 5 times, they will take your best cumulative score of each aspect. Yes. What was that called? Like the MAC, or it was some weird.
Yeah, they do have
name.
A phrase for that.
And they kept saying it over and over. And then I was like,
super scoring?
Super score. I'm like, what's a super score? Like we play in basketball. And then they kind of explained it. I was like, so they're trying hard to get anybody and everybody in or level the playing field across.
I think that's a great way of saying it, is the level of the playing field, because I think that's how it explained to us as we were going through with Alyssa, our oldest, is why not take the SAT and ACT? And they're like, well, it's a 4-hour or 5-hour block in one morning that you're putting all this weight into everything that they've done over a period of, call it 3.5 years, 3 years of high school at that point, all this classwork. And you're putting it all into
the thing that stinks,
morning,
I don't disagree, and I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but from how we were raised to give your effort in everything that you do, even what the Bible talks about on how we're supposed to approach our job, our life, our parenting, whatever we're doing, give your whole heart as it unto the Lord. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, okay, just get a couple good, and then who cares about this? Just get a passing grade, even if it's a D or C. But if this were taken across the board by all colleges, it'll completely change the dynamic of how kids learn. Like, we're taking for granted they're going to have to know certain things in certain courses, those GED type of classes, those 101s that nobody wants to take because it's not in your major. You still got to know how to do it.
Right.
And if you're just coasting through with D's because you only need 1 or 2 or 3 A's, to get into the college that you want, I mean, there's a long-term effect of changing the system like this, which kind of irritates me because I'm like, no, like the best students, no matter who they are, that try the hardest should have the opportunity. You can give scholarships and all that stuff. They still got to bust their butt. Now we're like, just be good in a couple of things and let the others slack and you can get into.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem messed up?
I don't think I could ever trust that. I think I would worry that
it'll change back.
Yeah. I would.
All right. Says the attorney in the room.
Yeah.
Don't trust it. Yeah, I see what you're saying. All right. And then, so we talked about academic importance. Is there a big push for extracurricular? How do you say that? Extracurricular activities. How important is that?
Yeah. I mean, just going down through it, they, say there's a little algorithm that they're looking at in college, acceptance. And what we were told through this process, just 12 months ago, was that you need to show that you're taking, they take into account that you're taking some of the highest level classes that your school offers. Because not every school offers AP classes, not every school offers a certain amount, same number of honors classes and so forth. But they say that gets taken into account, that they know, hey, if your school's got 5 AP classes and you only took 3, then okay, that goes into their formula calculation, the same way that even extracurricular activities, that still weighs pretty heavily is what we were told.
I think every school is a little unique.
I'm sure.
So you talk to school A and they're going to be like, well, this is why we wait and this is what we look at in school B, but from what we've understood in the 5 or 6 colleges we've looked into, every single one seems to care more than your grades. So your grades are important, however they want to tabulate, but they also want to know, are you going for student government? Do you play sports? And when you write your essays, they're like, we want to know who you are,
show
what
some
you
perseverance.
do. Yeah, what matters to you.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk about the essays in a minute, but it just seems like it's so different. I felt like we just handed our transcripts and am I accepted? I didn't write. I don't even remember writing an essay. Maybe I did. I
chose the applications that you didn't have to write essays. You require an essay? Yeah, not applying there.
Or hey, I played soccer. I was like, do you have a soccer team? That's all I care about.
That's all you cared about.
Yeah. So let's talk about the application process. So what did you guys do for that? Because that's super overwhelming. It's a business now. I feel
and now you got that Common App where, I don't know the full process as I'm just getting into it, but it feels like you can apply to a lot of schools very quickly. And that can, even from a financial perspective, you've got to have kind of restraints around that.
Funny thing about that, when we were sitting in that auditorium for University of Tennessee, the one gal, she was so funny. She was such a good speaker, and she was a senior in high school or senior in college. And she's like, now that we have the Common App technology and we have and there was another app that they said that they take, it said, please make sure your letterhead is the right school, because you can hit the check boxes or whatever. Make sure it doesn't say go, Alabama. And
Roll Tide.
Oh yeah. She was really getting on the Alabama train. She's like, we're Vols here. We hate that school.
Yeah, right. Go Big Orange.
Yeah. It was really funny to hear her say that. And she's like, it happens all the time.
Yep.
Where they just cut and paste.
Yep.
Or I don't know how the app works, but because we can't apply yet. Because when you're a rising senior, you don't apply till October, right? So you want to get in their tranches, from my understanding, on when you get in, and how schools are doing that these days is crazy.
Good grief.
But if you apply early, it doesn't. You want to do a school visit, which I understand. A school visit early matters on your application.
Yes.
And then when you get in the first tranche in October, you want to be the first to apply.
They track your interest, and they deem those kinds of things as interest.
And you have to do an official visit where you contact the school, you do a show. So if you go and visit and don't tell anybody, you it's like you weren't even there.
I understand that, but man, I didn't know that they were actually weighing essentially how many times you've come and shown interest in the school.
Yeah, and they'll give you a badge, and they'll tell you wherever you go, wave it in, because they want to see that you checked out everywhere and you bought stuff at the store. And I was like, dang, they're like watching my every move everywhere we go around the campus.
2 of the schools that we talked to, they check on through their app process whether you follow them on social media or not as well, your student.
Yep.
Wow. So they're looking for that too. Yeah, they want to see how interested are you in them, so they can figure out how serious they should be.
So
we don't care about your mental health. We just want you to follow us.
Man, we got another whole podcast for that.
We just want your money.
Yeah. Did you guys hire anybody to help? Do anything?
We did not.
Yeah.
No, we didn't.
So I should be ashamed that we did.
No.
Is that what you're saying?
We've got lots of friends, and you, Paul, that have hired people to help. And as competitive as it is, I don't blame people for trying to do everything they can to be able to give their kid the ability to put their best foot forward. We actually turned a lot of this stuff over to our daughter and said, hey, it's your responsibility. Tell us where you want to go. We'll pay the fees. We'll help you with your essays a little bit, but this is on you.
Well, you might have to know your kid too, because if I were to turn around and be like, all right, Evan, it's all on you. He'd be like,
Still be living
I'm
at
not
home.
gonna be at the house. I'm like, no, you're moving out, bro.
Still mowing lawns.
I'm hiring somebody. You're getting out of here. Yeah. So we've hired a person uptown that's all she does. Her full-time job is to help students walk through the whole application process, writing. And she's so specific that she'll know the requirements of specific schools and what they look for in your essays, or how the application process is specific to that school and how they look at grades or whatever. Like she's been, so far, I mean, it's been a great experience, and everybody that we know that's worked with her, it's been great. She hasn't always been able to get everybody into the school they want. But you know, you have a much better shot working with somebody like that than me going, all right, buddy, you're on your own. Good luck. Yeah. You know, hope it works out. So, and actually expectations, this wasn't a question I thought of until just now. How do you temper expectations? I know you haven't had one accepted. I haven't either. Did she get in the school she wanted to go to?
Ultimately, yes, but she didn't get into some of the schools that she wanted to.
How do you handle that?
I mean, that's kind of being a parent, helping your child through any disappointment. The one thing that's different is that there is so much pressure on kids, or they feel so much pressure now when it comes to getting into college and getting into the college that they think people expect them to get into. It is what was not a very stressful time, I think, probably for any of us when we were applying to college, because it wasn't as hard to get in there, has now become so uber competitive, and kids feel that pressure. Even if the parents aren't putting it on them, they feel that pressure. So you do have to be attentive to them and try to help them.
So you think it's harder to get in college now, or harder back then?
Yes, I think it's harder now.
I think it's much harder now.
Just because sheer volume?
Yes.
There's more, like now,
but schools are bigger.
Going to college.
Not that much bigger.
I think wish we would have looked that up.
Yeah.
So I feel it's harder. I felt it was harder when I was a kid to get into school.
How many applications are maybe you don't know. I think the average kid's probably filling out 10 to 15.
Yeah.
Like how many did
Alyssa did 12.
Yeah.
And like fully submitted a
fully applied to
fully
each,
applied to
each
12.
school.
Yeah.
Did 3.
Yeah.
And you've got, I hear stories
4.
about schools like Auburn over committing.
But how many of us filled out 12 applications?
No, I was going
to say
maybe
I guess
3 or 4.
That's the point.
Right. Yeah.
So now it's like, it's different. The landscape has changed. I don't know if it's easier or harder. My mind says it was harder back then because we applied to less. Maybe. And now it's like, hey, if I can get into one of these schools and I'll just pick. But I remember growing up, I was like, oh, they went to a big school. Like getting into like U of T or Alabama, I felt like it was impossible when I was a student.
Never even thought of applying out of state.
Me neither.
Like that wasn't even an option that I even comprehended.
And now it's like, you'll apply anywhere.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, but we got to take regional into the into the consideration and to the thing, because I think us being in the southeast, southeast schools are a whole lot harder to get into because they're seeing huge immigration coming from the north.
UT had 70,000 applicants.
Yeah,
70,000.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Because we've had both in my current industry and my previous one, we've had multiple schools from the East Coast to Midwest reach out to us to try to do extension site campuses down here, because they're seeing, it used to be, again, don't fact check, but he's saying usually people
fact check
fact check for sure. Fact check about 150 miles. Kids just usually didn't apply for anything outside 150 miles of their hometown.
Yeah, and
they're seeing those trends.
That's crazy.
Just not be there. They go a lot farther away, especially coming down to the southeast.
So
why wouldn't you? If you,
I was going to say
up in there, Michigan, Illinois, Maine.
Well, true. Maybe the better answer is it may not be as hard to get into a college, but I think it's harder to get into the college that most kids want.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way of saying it.
And maybe we're just in this.
Here comes the attorney.
Yeah,
we're the right answer.
Area. Yeah,
go Brad.
That's what I do, guys.
Van Hoy. So let's talk about
SEC school, and we're talking about some of the best athletic schools too, right? Yep. So you've
no
got
bias here in the South, not at all.
Right.
I'm not hearing any bias here. So let's transition to how you pick the school. So let's just say you get into 3 schools or 4 schools, or you don't get in. There's only one. You apply to 9, but there's really one. And whether you get into that or not, how do you narrow down the college that do we really leave it up to our kids? Is it, how much involvement do we have in that decision? Like, how do you?
I know you were wrestling with this. We've had many conversations about around it. Yeah. So share your experience around that first.
We were really willing to kind of go down two different paths too, because what Alyssa wanted to do was, wow, this just got interesting.
I didn't know it was that kind of show.
You never know around here.
I'm here for it. Oh man. But we did it. What Alyssa wanted to do was, business and entrepreneurship, international business. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities. And again, whether you want to head this direction or not, we can later in the show if we want to, but a lot of thoughts in and around a traditional approach versus a non-traditional approach. But let's just stay to your question, Paul. Like on the traditional approach, we were looking for schools that she wanted to study abroad. She wanted to do international as well. I mean, I think that helps limit it, which is what I've seen a lot of our friends do. I'm curious what Brad thinks on this too, but you can limit a lot of the schools based on, what are they good at? Are you going into engineering? Is it health sciences? Is it, do they have a great education program? And so, for us, she was looking for the study abroad experience, not just you can go here over the summer, but you can study for a semester or a year abroad. So that helped narrow of the 13 or so that we applied for, that narrowed it down.
Okay. So as you narrow that down, how much did the actual look and feel of the college come into play versus what the college did for your student, your child?
Yeah. I mean,
come on, Brad, give us a great attorney answer here.
Well, I'm going to answer your first question first.
Yeah, answer first.
In terms of narrowing it down, it did have to do with what her major was. She wanted to go into nursing, and so that helped narrow it down quite a bit. But she was also interested in a big school with good athletics and
lots of boys.
We didn't talk about that. We talked about that later. But feel absolutely mattered. Our first, at least the first college trip that I went on with her was to Clemson. And I called my wife that day.
And you said
I said, I'm pretty sure this is where she's going to end up. And it was 2 years before she ultimately ended up making that decision. But I feel
because she just loved it.
She loved it. I could see her there. She could see herself there. And I will tell you, being able to see yourself there with those people on campus in that environment, when you can picture yourself, that goes a long way to your student and you as a parent.
And you were reading her, or you were reading what you felt?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I was reading her, what I know about her, what she had said she wanted, and I could just see, look, I think there was probably a little tug of the spirit there saying, hey, look, it gave me a piece.
Yeah. Was there at any point during that journey while she's still going and visiting other schools, was there any like wavering where you thought maybe she'd go to a different place where you had to be like maybe there's some fatherly guidance going it? Or did she ultimately, just decided on her own?
No, it was a collective decision.
Okay.
Because she also she got into Tennessee, and I had, before we went on campus to visit Tennessee, I had checked it off my mental list.
Tennessee?
Oh yeah. And then we got on the
you were like, heck no balls around here.
I'm like, we're not going there.
I only do baby
roll tide.
And then we got on campus and I looked around and I thought, this is an incredible school that is way different than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, Tennessee. And I thought, what, I could see her. She found out about the nursing program at Tennessee before she found out about Clemson. So
they're in the process of building $200 million new nursing building program there.
I don't know.
We saw them breaking the ground when we were there.
But it was, Tennessee would have been a good option and one we thought she might do, because we weren't sure whether the Clemson nursing major option was ultimately going to work out or not.
But it did.
It did.
Or it is.
Yeah, it is. It did and it is.
Yeah, that's awesome.
One other thing I want to talk about I'm going to skip ahead. No, I'm not. I'm going to back up.
Yeah.
Because you said traditional and non. What was that? You lost approach.
Me. Yeah.
What is that?
All right. So I think that there are some fields of study that with the expense of college these days, because we haven't talked about that necessarily yet. I mean, it's got to be triple or quadruple.
Yeah.
Okay.
So nice
to
segue.
what we were paying, when we went to college, right? So I do feel like that there are some majors that you come on the tail end of 4 years paying, $30,000 to $50,000 a year. Is that really worth the education that what you actually learned there versus taking a non-traditional approach? So for an example, Alyssa, we had scripted out, hey, here's about 8 or 9 business classes that I think are really great that you need to take. Your business law 1 and 2, your econ, your accounting 1 and 2. But outside of that, a lot of that's filler. So it was like, how about you do an internship? You do 4 internships over the course of 4 years. And you get great experience on the job, right there in the office working. And is that more valuable? And now you're getting paid to learn and still take some of these classes versus paying everything to learn. And then you got to go get the experience afterwards. So that was a non-traditional approach. And again, it could make sense for her. But maybe not for an engineer or, nurse for sure. That's not necessarily what you want in your medical professionals is like, just on the job training.
We like on the job training, just not all of it.
Not all of it on the job. So that was, Paul, that was the direction we were kind of going with.
Was
being
that
a
ever
little disruptor in the market?
Did she lean into that at all?
No,
or?
She leaned in it big time.
Really?
Yeah, to the point where we kind of had to mourn the process together when it kind of just made a lot of sense for her to go to Samford and everything, from financially
I think my son is heavily considering that.
Yeah, it's a great school. And we didn't want to go into debt for it either. Like that was important for us. And so that was, and shifting which direction they go, we canceled, 1 or 2 options out just because it
of the cost.
Financially, just didn't make sense for us. And she got a great package to go to Samford. And so we're looking at it and we're like, okay.
For academic scholarship? Yeah.
And then the piece to maybe put a bow on that, the other hard part right now is there just is nothing that exists that can create where you have that many young adults in the same stage of life all together. So to have that experience, that college experience, like where you're with all these same age, kind of in the same, season of life, you can't replace that right now. You got a couple like YWAM or what's Youth with a Mission, where you can do kind of some intensive ministry training stuff, but there's nothing that you can get, even 45 or 50 students around the same age together. We couldn't find them. I mean, there are a couple of things out there, but nothing that like really piqued the interest when you're in business wanting to do it. It was more training, discipleship, that kind of thing.
You have to put value there, right?
You got to put value there. And that's where it's like, man, to have that many people, we loved it. So that was hard, to say we couldn't find it. We were willing, but we couldn't find it. So then we went more the traditional path.
That was the one comment I was going to make there is if you go the non-traditional path, you are giving up what were 4 of the most fun years of my life. And I think probably true for most people in that experience, you cannot go back and get it. Once you
that
give
community aspect, right?
So you lived your glory already? You're done? Is that what you just said?
I'm not ever sure I had a glory period.
We would all probably concur with that.
How long is the show?
So let's talk about the cost, because I know that's a big topic. And while you were talking, I just did some fun research, and I asked our favorite AI what the average cost was in the mid 90s. That's probably when we all went to school. Maybe some of us a little earlier than that. And
2000s.
So, not counting the young guy over here. So in the 90s, the average cost for 4 years was $35,000 to $50,000, $55,000.
That's like a year.
That's a year now,
Right.
Because now, or as of last year, for 4 years, you're looking at between $20,000 and $50,000, or $47,000 per year. That's in state. Out of state was 37 to 62. Jeez. So you're looking at 83,000 to 187,000 a year, or for all 4 years.
4 years. Yeah.
I mean, that is dramatically more expensive. Right. And I bet you if we looked up, let's do that.
Well, yeah. And while you're looking that up, Paul, I mean, think about a teacher.
That's what.
So you're coming out making $35,000 to $45,000.
And you got 80 grand in debt.
Yeah.
So median
why
income.
School debt is such a big topic right now
totally.
because so many people are saddled with it for so long.
Yeah.
Median income for the 90s was $36,000 annually, with 35. So it's basically 1 year's wage for 4 years of college maybe a little bit more. Median income for
has not
20
kept up.
Yeah.
And then now we'll say for 21, because I'm using AI and that's all I can go back to, was 70,000.
Okay.
So college has grown up to four times.
Yeah, 4 times.
And income's doubled.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And how in the world can you afford? Because now 1 year doesn't, back then 1 year's wage would pay for 4 years. Now 2 years' wage could potentially,
Maybe.
and maybe 2.5 years
Yeah.
have to pay for 4 years.
Yep.
That's ridiculous. So how do you get financial aid? Brad?
I'm not a good person to ask about financial aid.
Why?
I am my daughter's financial aid. Paul. Yeah. We're fortunate enough to be able to
Did she
do
get
that.
any merit scholarships or anything?
She did at other schools.
Or whatever
she
the other
actually, she
vocabulary-
actually did not at Clemson.
At Clemson,
Clemson
okay.
doesn't. Clemson, in a relatively short period of time, has gone from giving out pretty good money to telling you you're lucky you got in. Be grateful
Wow.
for it. Yeah.
And you
So they
drank
just
that
don't
Kool-Aid.
give anything.
Drank that Kool-Aid.
You drank it.
Yep.
Was it orange?
And purple.
What's going on with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, no financial aid. You got Alyssa
she get any
got
scholarships
Yeah, Alyssa
and
got
stuff?
academic
Okay.
scholarships, and this is the other thing that was helpful through the process too for us is Samford's a private school, and they told us early on, don't be shocked by the initial sticker that you see, sticker price, because if they want you there, they'll figure out how to get you there, and so. We're going to Samford cheaper than 2 of the state schools that she got into
Wow.
as well.
That's awesome.
So I think that
She a good
that
student?
says something. Yeah, she's a good student. Yeah, she would fall into that category, Paul, where she has a great GPA, but her test scores for her ACT and SAT didn't match what her GPA and weighted GPA is. So
What are you going to say over there, Brad?
She takes after her mom.
yeah, genetically, she's
Genetic.
got good genes on her mom. No, that's right.
Yeah, I don't think any of us have anything good to say on the finance side. I don't think we're going to be a whole lot of help,
Yeah.
at least on this show.
No.
I do want to talk about the transition from high school to college, because we're kind of in the middle of that. We're on the front side preparing. You're still there, and you're also 2 years into college.
Mhm.
So
You have
what?
another one coming. So
and-
this is like,
yeah.
what are you learning from your oldest daughter that you want younger daughter to learn?
It's a great question. The first year of college is a tough transition for almost everybody. The faster they find their group of people, the easier and quicker that transition occurs. The faster they get plugged into a church and a
ministry.
ministry
Yep.
on campus, the better that transition
You
is
got to
going to
find
go.
community.
Yeah, you got to find community, and you want that.
That's in every facet of life.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
It becomes more important when you're no longer at the,
Yeah, mom and
living
dad
in the
to lean
same
back.
house. That's right. Seeing what's going on. So it's, Paul, before we got started, I was telling you, I was more worried at first when we started the K through 12 schooling process about the academic preparation. When I sent her out after graduation, I immediately became much more worried about the spiritual preparation side of things. That becomes much more important. You'll figure out how to do it in college unless you just goof off.
It is so
Yeah,
funny
but-
that you say that, because it's, I feel that I'm in the middle of that transition where I go from, buddy, you got to get your grades, and now I'm like, all right, just graduate. And are you like capable? Like, I don't mean this to sound the wrong way, the way it's going to come out. Like, can we make a mature decision? And then you think back, how was I? How selfish was I? Thinking through that. But it does change. You go from, I want to prepare you from an academic standpoint and make sure you have good grades to, oh man, like there's huge consequences of the decisions that you're going to make in college. And you start, not nitpicking so much about, study for your grades, then how could you have handled that situation a little bit better, and thinking through the bigger picture, and then my prayers have changed from, Lord, give him good grades to give him a good head on his shoulders. I've completely changed, or I'm changing. And hearing you say that today at lunch was the same thing. Like, oh man.
Yeah. The life altering decisions that they get to make aren't about classes or whether to do good on a test or something like that. The life altering decisions are much broader than that.
Is it have greater consequences?
Much greater consequences.
Is it
getting a
changing how
B.
you're parenting your younger daughter? And for you too, like now you're sending your oldest out, like, is it changing how you're parenting?
That's a good question.
Because this is selfish for me, because I do have the younger child, right? Like the same age. So
I think it has caused me to try to take, I don't think I ever put pressure on Ava from an academic perspective. And we certainly talked to Lexi about the academics and how important it is to do well, to give herself as many options. But I try to take the stress away of the academic side of things more. And we spend more time talking about how to work through relational questions, how to think about how to control some of the impulses that you're just kind of naturally wired with that aren't going to serve you well.
Curiosity.
No, not so much that.
Oh yeah, they're still there, buddy.
No, that wasn't what I was talking about. But yes.
Paul's got boys.
Yeah, boys.
I got 3 of them.
I've talked to her about how all boys are evil.
Exactly.
Just don't
Are you
let
talking about
Paul's
my boys?
kids come to Clemson.
They probably won't get in. Don't worry about it.
They take
Who we kidding?
That's right.
They do. 2 of them do.
So I don't. Maybe subtly it changes. I mean,
Okay.
I'd like to think we were already there. Look, the real parenting in the house is done by my wife. Okay. So you'd have to ask her that question.
Yeah.
Come on.
New
That's
guest.
not
Phone a friend.
Yeah.
Phone a friend.
So anything else to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, what resonated with me when Brad was saying that you start shifting your parenting, that aspect of it, I have seen that. I don't know if we've necessarily thought about it until he just said that, but my mind has 100% shifted from like grades and all into behaviors. Like, are you like, you're going to have a roommate, right? Like, you can't just leave that there. Like, there's some of that stuff that I'm like thinking like, and then it's like, I'm more.
And then you walk into your room and you see your dirty clothes.
Yeah, of course. But it's like
Water bottle sitting everywhere.
Yeah. Well, like dinner the other day, I was like, you can't, you just want to make sure you can't put your feet up on like a chair like that, right?
Yes.
And that you should be sitting up straight at the dinner table. Like there's some of those things that we started real young when they're
can cut
toddlers and
your
you're doing
food.
it.
You don't
But
have to
now I'm
put it
like,
all in at one time.
I feel like I got like a last shot to make sure that and I was like, man, there are some things that I need you to know that at least if you decide not to do it, it's fine. But you at least got to know that this is kind of how you need to like.
So the last shot, my wife would have been all over that if you would have said that, because she's like, she tells me all the time, we just have one more year. And I was like, is he going to die? Like, why do you say that? Like, we have the rest of our lives whenever God decides to take either one of us home. But our parenting doesn't stop the day they go to college. So, I tell her all the time, like, babe, I hope that we have instilled enough into him. At this point, it's just the icing on the cake. You might feel it's more, but he learns this much now. He learned this much earlier. And I feel like, we've poured into him. And if he's deciding to do different things, it's not because we screwed up now. We're not going to be able to, fix it now. You can adjust your parenting. We do. I have definitely transitioned or transitioning. But at the same time, I'm like, babe, I like that sail is, or ship is already sailed or sailing. It's almost departed from the dock at this point. And
it is tough as a parent to, I think, remember they are individuals who get to make their own decisions. You can tell them how to think about things. You can try to build a stronger foundation, but you cannot make the decision for them. They get to make the decision. They're going to have consequences they have to live with. And so hopefully you've got a strong enough relationship and an open enough relationship where they're able to talk to you about what's going on at school, where their problems are. And you can't, because you're right, your parenting doesn't stop. Our parenting hasn't stopped just because we send her out. Conversations change, but
it changes.
The parenting hasn't. I mean, the fact that you're
I get more mature. Like, are we really going to say, okay, we're going to talk about this right now?
Mm-hmm.
All right, shoot.
Yeah. Which is fun. Which that is the fun. That is the fun part of it, I think.
Fun?
Yeah. I was looking for the deeper, more mature adult conversations. And so
and then being able to watch certain movies with your kid that there's this movie, I'm not even going to say the name of it, but there was a scene that happened.
All kinds of judgment heading your way.
Oh yeah. That's okay. You can judge me. I deserve to be judged.
He's about to get peppered.
Yeah. But I was watching this the other night. Never seen this movie before. It's an Adam Sandler movie, so you can put your mind wherever you want it. And this one scene, I was like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I would love to watch this with my young one. And I'm like, I can't, because it's just too perverted. That scene was not. But oh my gosh, would I love to be able to watch. I can't wait. But I'm going to miss that innocent age where he'll think that scene, although I'm 40s. I'm cracking up. You know, he'll laugh.
You're really
but
just
I can't,
a teenage boy
oh,
in a 40-year-old
clearly.
body.
Not just me, bro.
Yeah.
We all are.
Yeah.
Our frontal lobe is not formed yet.
They say 25, but I don't even.
No.
It might be
Looking
like
more
60.
like 55.
That's for girls.
Does it ever change? I don't think it ever changed. But the reality is, I think we do desire to have that, you know, that adult relationship with our kids, even at a younger age. And sometimes we forget, like, I can't talk to him. He's only 6, you know, or he's 12. And like in my youngest son's, you know, situation, like I can't share that with him because they'll want to watch the rest of it. And I shouldn't probably, although it's nothing bad, but it's funny, but it's twisted humor.
Yeah, sure.
You guys have probably seen every Adam Sandler movie ever, I'm sure. All right, so give me one last, if you could go all the way back before you went to either you or your kids, or as you've gone through this transition, give a nugget of truth, a nugget of advice to whoever's listening, you know, to say, hey, if I could do this all over again, you know, either when I went through it or what you're going through with your kids, give some gold here for a minute. What do you got?
It's actually something my father told me when I went, and I didn't follow it to the degree that I should have. He said, get as many experiences, good experience, wholesome experiences, but as many experiences as you can get in college. Take advantage of all the opportunities you have, because you will not have it again once you start out and get into the job world. And that would be what I would tell her too. Work hard, do your very best. Grades will take care of themselves. Enjoy this time. It is a unique opportunity in time in life that doesn't ever come back again. And there's so much that you can do and broaden your experiences and just have incredible memories and friendships and things that come from that. Soak it all up.
Wholesome and pure. I might
wholesome
put an
and
emphasis
pure.
on that one.
Emphasis on that.
Because there are a lot of experiences in college.
You just kind of glazed over that part. And I was like,
my wife raised a wise and discerning daughter, and I'm trusting on that.
Josh, what you got?
Yeah, I think so what I had started early on when we, you know, I alluded to earlier that it was important for us not to go in debt for school, and we were going to figure it out, whether, again, if that meant community college for a year or two and then transitioning over into, you know, traditional 4-year school. But I was kind of holding that back from Alyssa. She knew that we weren't going to go in debt, but she didn't really know the numbers. So what Angie was, my wife was, she was smart enough throughout this process. She brought up, she's like, I think not sharing the numbers with Alyssa is actually a detriment to her because she doesn't actually know what her options are. So she was canceling out schools, you know, with certain numbers, even though she thought maybe she'd be excited about going there because she saw kind of the dollar amount, and she's like, well, I don't know how that would actually happen. And so I put a spreadsheet together where I said, hey, here's what you've been saving up, because 50% of everything that she's ever made went to college savings. And then, you know, her grandmother and grandpa, she didn't appreciate it at the time, but was putting all of their birthday money and Christmas gifts into college. And of course,
she wanted presents.
But now she's like, loves it. Like, she's like, oh, thank you so much, you know, which was great foresight on my parents' side. And then also what Angie and I were going to contribute. And then that kind of showed, okay, well, here's the delta that we're coming up to. Well, that opened up the door for her where she saw those numbers, and then she was okay. So she was more motivated to apply for scholarships during that time because it became more real to her. Because she didn't look at a number, because as we've been talking about earlier, you know, you're looking at, you know, $35,000 to $40,000 to $50,000 in some of these schools a year. And she was like, there's no way that's happening. Well, then it became more of a reality. And then when she got her the scholarship money started coming in, she started plugging it into the spreadsheet. And then she's like, oh, this one's viable now, or this one's not viable. And that was that. Again, I think that was helpful for her. And it's probably per kid. And then the other thing that we were encouraged to do throughout this process was allow this, Brad alluded to this earlier too, that allow this to be a great spiritual journey for her between her and God. Like, this will be her kind of first big decision in life. And if she's all in on it and it's her and God, then we were told, we haven't experienced this yet, but we are told then when they make that choice, they have ownership in that choice, which makes sense from a business standpoint, right? You bring your employees in on something, bring them in, and then all of a sudden there's bigger buy-in. Well, that was what is explained to us from a college standpoint, is allow her to be brought in on this and allow this to watch her to see God move on her behalf and offer her scholarships that she didn't think she was going to get, and then she got, and have her step on that campus and have God affirm her by, people sending her. She got a couple of texts on one of the schools at Samford where she ended up going randomly that people didn't even know she was there. And she ended up getting some text saying, "Hey, I'm really praying for you. And
that's
the
awesome.
decision, here's a scripture for you," while she's on campus the second time seeing it. So she's, again, between her and God, she was like, I was praying for affirmation, and I feel like I got affirmation. I was walking around by myself. She, told Angie on the second trip, she's like, "Hey, I just need to walk this campus and pray through it." And there she started receiving texts in that moment. That's like what you, like, I was getting chills even sharing this.
Did that happen at Clemson?
Thing, so
that's all I'm saying. Didn't happen at Clemson, did it?
First day.
It actually did
at the
for me.
first visit.
Sure.
That's awesome.
So
That's
that would be my thing, is just allow it to be a real great journey between them and God as they're going into adulthood. I mean, that's what, again, like you said, Paul, we can only do so much as parents, and we've given it everything we've gotten. Most of your listeners probably have like, hey, we maybe have some regrets, but usually you've given it everything you've gotten. It's got to kind of put in God's hands at that and allow it to be between them and the Lord.
Mine's very close to that. The only thing I would add is, when my wife and I were talking about this whole college journey with our kids when they were super young, how did we want to handle the whole financing thing? And for me, I grew up very poor, and my parents couldn't add a whole lot to the college experience. So, there was scholarship, and then there wasn't in my situation. I won't go into that, but the reality is I paid for all of my school. I went to a private school. My grandparents paid for it at high school, and then college I was on my own. And in high school, I was all about sports, and I could care less about grades. And then college, I gave up sports, and I became all about grades. And because I was paying, and I took ownership. That's one of the words you used. Yeah. And Steph and I have talked many times about this. And I'm like, babe, they're taking ownership. So no matter how much God has blessed us and that we can pay the whole bill, we're not. Because I want them to have ownership in their decision, and I want them to have ownership in the cost. So we haven't nailed this down, but we're at least going to pay 50%. We may pay the whole thing, but they're not going to know that until they're done, until the last one gets out.
Yeah.
And,
so hopefully they don't listen to this podcast.
Yeah. So, but
and clear that we know they won't.
But we're going to give them, whatever scholarship from mom and dad, whatever they get on their own. And then if they fail a class, they pay us back. So there's consequences. There's a budget. There's a thought process behind what we're doing. I'm treating it like a business, and I'm like, we're giving you grants, and you get to use this. But if you don't use this grant well, we're taking the grant back, and then you have your own debt on the side. We'll figure that out once they get out, depending on how that school went and the decisions they made. And I'll be very biased, according to what they do, because I had to pay the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it was the best money I ever spent my whole life, because it grew me up.
Yep.
I learned lessons, and I went from a carefree, careless, horribly immature jock who was arrogant and nobody wanted to be friends with me to, I just started chasing God's heart. Yeah. And I gave up sports, and I cared about ministry and things. Yeah. I'm like, my life just completely changed the moment I had to write a check.
Yeah.
And I want my boys to experience that same thing, even though God's put us in a position we can write that check. But I don't want to, because I want them to have the same joy, it sucks, of debt, of responsibility. And I feel like we're pushing them into that. They already know it. They don't necessarily know the numbers. I'm definitely going to steal the spreadsheet idea. And hopefully my son speaks spreadsheet.
Even that's a good learning thing for him.
Yeah, I do. I love spreadsheets. So I'm not sure he does. But yeah, it'll be.
This is called a budget.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm excited. The ownership thing is biggest for me. And I'd say if I give any advice to any parent out there, it'd be like, help encourage your son or force them to take ownership of the school, of the whole process, because they're leaving you. And they're on their own, as you know. And you're like, it doesn't stop the worry, doesn't stop the parenting, but it does separate. and they're on their own. I remember the first day on campus, I'm like, where do I go? What do I do? I'm like, I do anything I want, but I have no friends.
Right. Gotta go figure this out.
And you just work your way into friendships and stuff like that. And you made a good point earlier about finding their circle. Yeah. Finding that friend group. And the more research, and we haven't gotten into this on our own. Once they pick that school, I want to make sure, we can find a good ministry, a good friend group. They're going to find and friend whoever they find and friend. But at least having an idea like, hey, it meets on this night, this day, here's the leader, like give them a little bit of encouragement. Because when we were at University of Tennessee, they had, I think it's called Church Street or Mission Street. So you have the frat street or whatever, all those.
They've got all the fraternity houses.
Fraternity row or whatever.
Yeah, Greek row.
And then what's it called? Pink row?
Is it Greek
row?
Yeah, Greek row.
Well, they also had on the other side of the campus, they call it Church Street or Mission Street. It was all the church all the church ministries all lined up. And I was like, where are we? Because I went to Liberty and I was like, that I could understand that at Liberty, but at University of Tennessee. And then the tour guide, she's like, well, I'm a part of our what was the one that your daughter is a part of?
RUF.
Yeah. And I had to Google it. I'm like, what is RUF? And I was like, this is pretty awesome. I'd never heard of this before. And the building was right across the street. And I'm like, this is amazing that there's such a strong presence in certain schools for that type of thing that we all share in our heart for our kids. So it's just.
Yeah. When Brad was actually sharing that about with Ava's kind of experience. So when we had Alyssa go through schools, we had her establish a pros and cons list, but also how many people did you see that you feel like you could be friends with, or did you meet that you could be friends with? That was part of the exercise when we were going through and touring in college campuses, because we felt like that was going to be important.
My son's been judging everybody like there's like he didn't like Liberty because like too many dorks go there. And I was like, hello, I went there.
Exactly, you and mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Exhibit A.
But they do look around campus. Like every campus we've been, he's like, all right,
can't
they're
see myself
normal.
there.
Or
that's not my people.
Yeah.
But y'all have recapped two really big nuggets for me. One, just like allowing them to have ownership in it or almost forcing it because they got to have buy-in, right? Or that it can go sideways quick. And then helping them, especially being a parent of a daughter who I would say leans more introverted, using the next couple of years to put her in situations to help her establish new relationships where the first time she's having to kind of put herself out there isn't that first weekend at college, helping her do that in whatever's happening here. So
awesome.
Those are two good nuggets there.
Well, thanks guys. This has been great for me. I've learned a ton. I don't know if anybody else is going to learn anything, but this has been very good for us, very good for me. And just thanks for spending some time opening your heart and tell us a little bit about your experiences. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Go Balls.